Today, I'm excited to welcome Todd Palmer to the podcast. Todd is an executive coach, keynote speaker, thought leader, author, and CEO of Extraordinary Advisors, who's committed to helping business owners tackle their obstacles and clear the path to success. As an entrepreneur, Todd knows the struggles that business owners face regarding people, cash, strategy, and execution. He took his company from being $600,000 in debt to making the Inc. 500 as one of America's fastest growing companies, 6 times. He specializes in helping leaders fuse the mission statement of their organization with their personal core values while addressing fears, self-doubts, and the ever-present imposter syndrome. He's here today to share some of the lessons he's learned along the way, as well as a proven framework for helping business owners achieve success. Todd, welcome to the Go for Launch podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, thanks. Well, let's start off by asking, where are you in the world today? And then share one fun fact or story about yourself that people may not know.
So I'm currently in Detroit, Michigan. I'm at home, not on the road today, which is exciting to be here. And one fun fact people may not know about me. So people are often surprised to learn that I grew up on a farm.
Interesting. What type of farm?
It's what my parents called a city farm. And a city farm basically is kind of like a Noah's Ark farm. There's one of this and two of that and one of this and two of that. So it was not a working farm. We had about 50 acres, give or take. And the majority of it was really there just for to be leased out to real farmers. You know, people who actually made their living on the farm.
Okay.
Both my parents worked for Chrysler back in the automotive days. And their dream was to always own a farm, and they decided to take that leap and they owned a farm when I was growing up.
Neat. All right. Well, I love that. So Michigan farming.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
50 acres right now in Michigan, probably a pretty good thing to own. But well, let's go back in time for a minute, Todd. I want to ask you about the business that you were in that was once $600,000 in debt. That sounds frightening to anybody. I'd like you to just tell us, briefly what that business was. Number one. Number two, how did you get that far down in the hole? And then 3, what did you do specifically to get out of it and turn things around?
Yeah, it's quite the story. Sometimes when I think about it, it's like, oh my gosh, who's that crazy man? And then I look in the mirror like, oh, it's that guy. So I started my company when I was 27 years old. It was a staffing and temporary help company here in the Detroit metro market. And we provided general labor temps. And my goal, the driver for me is I wanted to get my company to $20 million in revenue, because I'd always been told that that's this sweet number where you're great for acquisition, or you can really grow and scale from that point. And I was, in the beginning, very much a rugged individualist. I was doing HR, I was doing sales, I was doing ops, I was doing recruiting, accounting at night, the whole 9 yards. I was the be all and do all, which for my personality at the time fit really, really well. Unfortunately, that created bottlenecks within the organization. So the 2 bottlenecks that really helped get us to $600,000 in debt were, and the bottleneck always starts, I believe, at the top. So the first bottleneck was me. I was very much wrapped up in being the oracle, having everything flow through me. I had to make all decisions. I wasn't delegating, or I'd delegate to staff, and then I would take it back. And I would love to put out the fires, but when I realized that I was the best firefighter, I was also the chief arsonist. So I'd start the fire, so I had something to put my fingers into. So the first part of the problem was frankly, it was me as the leader. Second part of the problem was I was very much driven by that $20 million number. That $20 million was a revenue number. I did not fully take into account, and this is, kind of embarrassing to admit, that profits are more important than revenue. And I was so focused on chasing the whales in the staffing space, companies that used a lot of temporary help, that I could quickly get to 20 million in scale, that I was cutting deals, I was giving extended payment terms, I was razor thin margins, all the bad behaviors of somebody who's addicted to getting to $20 million. 10 years into the deal, I'm $600,000 in debt because I had a client go bankrupt on me for about $220,000. I had other clients that weren't paying me. I kept gambling, trying new things, and hiring, high-end talent, high expensive talent that wouldn't produce because I wouldn't hold them accountable. And I'm about 2 months from running out of all of my money. I'm a single parent, and I'm talking to my son one day at dinner, and he's freaking out, saying, what are we going to do? Like, it's kind of like, Dad, you're letting me down. And it hit me. And he goes, I talked to my friend, his dad said you should file for bankruptcy. And what are you going to do, Dad? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Like, So, that was the 25th meeting of the day in my head with my itty bitty shitty committee telling me how much I dropped the ball, how I wasn't enough. I was a failure as a leader, as a failure as an entrepreneur. But that's where all the meetings were taking place. We're in my head. I wasn't talking to people about it. I wasn't going out and getting help. I was trying to figure out how to do it. And the bank was calling, and it was just really a scary time. So finally, kind of at the 11th hour, I did, in football terms, would be considered like a Hail Mary. And I reached out for help for the first time. I mean, I really, I humbled myself. I put my pride and ego aside, and I hired a coach. And that coach came in, and he tried to be very nice in the beginning, saying, "Oh, it can't be as bad as you're telling me. It can't be as bad as you're telling me." He flew in from California. He spends a day going over the numbers. He was like, "Oh, it's worse than you told me. Your kid might be right. Bankruptcy might be your best option." And I said, "I can't file bankruptcy. Here's why. I can't file bankruptcy because I know in my heart of hearts, I've not done everything I can do as the leader. I've not done everything I can do to pivot this company out of being, this lemon sucking, soul sucking experience. I own that." And I said to him, I said, "My son is he's an athlete. He's a student. And I tell him he can't quit something until he's done everything he can. Now, if he wants to start a sport and go through the season and not play again next year, that's fine. But he can't quit in the middle." And I said, "This is a game to me. And I'm in the middle of my game and I can't quit right now." So, the biggest thing to kind of close the loop on the question is the first thing I did to get unstuck and to start getting $600,000 out of debt was to hire a coach and raise my hand and ask for help and put my pride and ego aside.
That is a huge moment in time when you get to that point where you admit you don't have all the answers. You mentioned that you were sort of addicted, to that feeling of power.
Oh,
And
sure.
thinking that, you said you'd give people stuff to do and then you take it back. That is so common. And also I heard, 10 years plus. I mean, it's not like it happened quickly and then you were suddenly, it just kept going and going. The old saying, if you're in the middle of a hole, the first thing you need to do is stop digging. But, unfortunately, a lot of times we can just keep digging faster and faster, thinking surely to God that we're going to hit the rock at some point. And maybe things will turn around, but, stop digging, get a coach, figure out what's going on. So kudos to you for doing that. And then how long, once you got the coach, did you start to right the ship and get things back on track?
So
out of debt?
I'll tell you a little secret, tell your audience about the worst day of my life. So I hired my coach in early September. He comes out to Detroit. And on September 5th, we had a very long meeting, went through the numbers, went through the staff, went through the client list, drew a red line. Like, these clients aren't even really profitable. So just get rid of them, because really all you are is a bank to them, which is, very painful to deal with.
Sure. Getting rid of any client is painful.
Yeah. But if they don't make you any money, why have them?
Right. But like you said, it's like revenue, dollars coming in is not the thing as dollars keeping in the bank, profit.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of the times it's just not, the exchange isn't come in, you keep it. It's like, come in. Oh my God, that money has already gone out 4 times over. Right.
Yeah. So and especially in the staffing space, if I have a dollar invoice, 85% of that dollar is typically wrapped up in payroll and burdens and taxes that's already paid out anyway. So that money's already gone by the time I get paid.
Wow.
And so we're sitting there on September 9th, 2006. And I decided to walk in, and I fired my entire company in one day, and I literally started over.
Oh, that's painful too.
So the first step in the process was getting rid of the toxic culture. I had allowed it to happen, so it is on me. But I couldn't keep people that I didn't trust, and I couldn't keep people who I couldn't measure. I couldn't keep people who were used to me working one way, and I needed to shift and change. So that's the first thing I did. So I had to restaff. So I used to only hire people who came from the recruiting or the HR backgrounds or experience pieces. I changed that model up, and I created a process called How to Hire for DNA, Not for Resume. And I hired people from a lot of people from restaurant, from retail, from other customer service-based businesses. My most successful person at one point came from a doctor's office. She was a reception, junior person there. My second most successful person was a waiter at Olive Garden, of all places.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, these are people who match the core values of me, match the core values of the organization. I can teach them to be a good recruiter. I can't teach them to be a good person, to fit my needs. Yeah. So got rid of this toxic staff, turned the staff over. And then we really pivoted to focus only on, we drew a line in the sand of, we will not take a client that does not have at least this margin attached to it. We just won't touch it. And we would turn down opportunities. We would, as we were growing and scaling and pivoting, we would, pass up on things that were great cash flow potentially, but not profitability. Because remember, I'm $600,000 in debt. Through this process, then the last piece we did is we really started doing a lot of market research, quote unquote, from a sales perspective. Because right now, fired everybody in 06, 07, 08, 09. Where are we? We're in the middle of the recession.
Yep.
Nope. 15% unemployment. You don't need a recruiter until you do. So we started asking clever questions like, well, when you come out of the recession, what's the first person you're going to hire? Or if you could wave a magic wand and you have these, we were focused primarily on the manufacturing sector in Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, and Houston. Because Houston at least had some activity at that time.
Okay.
And what we kept asking was, when you come out of the recession, Brandon, what's the first person you're going to hire? And we kept looking for patterns. And in those patterns, we identified an area where there was an increased demand and a diminished supply of skilled trades talent. So we then went and pivoted into finding as many of those talented people who are CNC machinists, plant managers, high-end quality CMM programmers. There's like 4 or 5 niches we were able to really get into. And we started collecting all of them and creating a relationship there because they were looking for work.
Okay.
So then we would call the client back who one day said, hey, I need a Mazak. It's called Mazak Mazotrol. It's kind of a programming software that goes into a piece of CNC equipment. And I'd say, hey, Brandon, I've got this guy. I know you're not looking, but when you are looking, I've got this guy, Tony, 25 years of experience, high-end aerospace, tight tolerance. He's literally a profit center for every company he's worked at. And that's what they would say.
Yeah, they go, okay, well, maybe we should go ahead and pull the trigger now, right?
kind of like during the COVID times, I'm telling my coaching clients to bring on as much great talent as you can while it's on the street, because it won't be there forever. So slowly we started doing it. And then the last piece of it is we charged more for that because these were rare people. So we kind of went for the diamonds in the rough. We're going to charge more for that, and we're going to get paid faster. So when we did make a placement, we got paid faster, which took care of the days outstanding, and we got paid more, which reduced the numbers. So over about an 8-year period, we paid off all $600,000 in debt. I paid off everybody in full, renegotiated with our bank, took care of all that, and the business hockey stick, because we found that inflection point of increased demand and diminished supply, and that's how we got on the Inc. 5000 6 times.
Oh, congratulations. That's a hell of a journey and a great story there. I also read, Todd, that once you said that there's some parallels between that entrepreneurial mindset and a 12-step recovery program for overcoming addiction. Can you explain that?
So let's talk about my addictions. I'm addicted to getting 20 million in revenue, and I'll do whatever I can to get there. I'll sacrifice. I'll rob Peter to pay Paul. I've got a couple of clients of mine that are in recovery programs, and they actually call me they don't call me their business coach or their life by design coach. They call me their business sponsor.
Their sponsor. Yeah.
Because of how I talk to them. And I say, well, because a lot of us, so I was chasing the 20 million. We're heading in that direction. We're making the Inc. list, and we're getting a lot of accolades, but I'm still feeling an emptiness inside as the CEO. I'm feeling an emptiness as the leader. Telling the story to my client, he goes like, oh yeah, I've been there. Why do you think I drank so much? I had an emptiness within and I wanted to numb it. You just numbed it through entrepreneurship.
Like, right. Wow. And by the way, you and I probably both know plenty of entrepreneurs who do that daily.
Oh, totally.
It's their fix.
Yeah. Well, they chase the bright and shinies, or they want to revamp this, or they want to be, I love crossing things off a list. I love getting things done. I love feeling a sense of accomplishment. So I'm going to start a bunch of fires. So I have a bunch of fires to put out like I did. So the patterns are often universal. Addiction is addiction is addiction. And I was only able to work through what I needed to work through so I used one coach for 7 years, and I've used I still have a coach, and he's a neurosurgeon, and he understands how the brain works. He's literally done brain surgeries and put you under an MRI and ask you questions, different parts of your brains fire as you answer, which is fascinating to watch. And I had to get good with me in order for me to be a better CEO. It was inside out work. So now when I'm coaching my clients through Extraordinary Advisors, we talk about, what do they need to do to get the life they want? Because they can have whatever they want. My job isn't to be the governor of their dreams and desires, but why do you want it? So if you want to have $10 million in the bank, why is that important to you? And inevitably, again, I've been doing this for 3 years now. Inevitably, it always comes down to something within inside of them. Something is lacking, something is missing, something from childhood was never healed, whatever we want to talk about. But it's always an inside out thing. So if they want to show up differently in their company, then they have to do the inside out work. And that's really where I meet them.
Right. And the other thing you said, you initially had that goal for $20 million and you were just gunning for that at all costs. As you said, a lot of times the entrepreneur hits that mark and then they look around and go, well, this isn't enough. I need now. Okay, let's go to 40 million. Right. Yeah. And it's like, it never ends, but
we never get fed. Yeah. You're spot on.
Yeah. And what do you say to people like that? Like eventually, You got to hit goals that are going to actually make you satisfied, or figure out that maybe it's not the $20 million, that it's the process and the journey along the way, the daily fulfillment. Don't just chase some crazy number and think when you grab that tiger by the tail, everything's going to be awesome. Right.
Yeah.
It's just not the case.
Question I'll often ask is, how many zeros is enough? You're at 10 million, you're at 100 million, you're at how many zeros is enough? Because what have you sacrificed to get there? And because I've done that, I can stand there and be very, very clear with them, and say, what have you sacrificed? Because like an addict, an entrepreneur will give up friends and family. They will lose loved ones. They will end relationships. They will create toxicity in their lives and not even recognize it. They'll tell themselves the BS story of their itty bitty shitty will tell them, you're not doing this for you. You're doing this for your family. You know what? They're doing it for themselves. Their family may benefit, which is awesome, but they're doing it for themselves. No, I always would just tell people, I was chasing the high of getting to 20 million, just like someone else is chasing the high through drugs and alcohol. We're just chasing the next high. What's the next one? And when we do get there, I'm on the 5,006 times. It's kind of like, It shouldn't be, but it was, I'm like, that was a wake-up call for me. Like, wait a minute, I've exceeded whatever I thought I was going to do. At one point, my goal was just don't lose my house. Now, paid off all the debt, life is good. This isn't satisfying. Isn't that interesting? So one of the things that I've learned through my coach is, if I have those internal thoughts, it's not to criticize them. It's not to shame and guilt myself or should all over myself. I shouldn't feel this. I should feel that.
Should all over yourself.
Should all over yourself. What I do is I ask myself, I wonder why I'm feeling that way. So to my clients. So Brandy, you want to have a $20 million company? What does that mean to you? Well, it means financial success. Awesome. Love financial success. What does that mean to you? Lifetime wealth for myself and my kids. Awesome. Why is that important? Why is that? It's massive curiosity on steroids. And we ultimately work down to why that matters. And then once we figure out what that pain is, then we can move up from there. It's like, it's almost like taking somebody down into the basement of their heart and soul to build that extraordinary life. I mean, people get so confused when they see the word extraordinary. It's like Taylor Swift being on stage getting an award saying everything's awesome. It's awesome. The word awesome is overused and the word extraordinary is overused. Building an extraordinary life, the way I coach it anyways, is it's a very singular event. It's a very self-care event, which sometimes to the world looks like a very self-centered event. And by creating a life of design what you want, I literally had a client, his goal was to be able to work 3.5 days a week. That's it. That was his goal, because he wanted to spend more time with his grandkids. Great goal. Easy, I thought, until it wasn't. Because he had 2 leaders in his organization who were blocking everything. They were not doing what they said, and they were basically sabotaging his goals and dreams. Once we got those leaders out of the way, not only does he work 3.5 days a week, awesome life by design, his company's revenue is up 70%, and his profits, because he now learned, like I had to learn how to make money, are up 500%.
That's incredible. Well, listen, I know a lot of people also have, this phrase, turning lemons into lemonade, right? But you don't have that philosophy. In fact, you're known as the no lemons guy. So can you tell me what you hate about lemons and what's your different philosophy? Well,
so that's for actually ties into my next book, From Suck to Success. And on the cover is this big, like he sucked out lemon. It's a lemon which half cut out. And people often say, I want to take lemons and make lemonade. Great. I'm not opposed to that. If you take a look at the consistency and the nutritional value of a lemon, there's a lot of vitamins in there. There's a lot of nutrients in there. So if it's gonna suck, what are you gonna get out of it? What can you take with it? What can you learn from those experiences? So throughout the book, I tell my story, and those of like Brian Scudamore, a buddy of mine from 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank, and Colonel Sanders from Kentucky Fried Chicken, and all these other, some of my clients are in the book. And we talk about how we were able to help them recognize that really, when you're sucking on a lemon, you're learning a lot. You're getting nutrition, but you're also getting bitterness that you maybe don't like. Some people believe it, I actually like raw lemons, so good for them. And it's really to help them understand that you can go from, I was sucking a lemon because that's all I could afford to eat. That's the story I tell myself. And to get to where I wanted to go, I had to suck the lemon dry. It's kind of like dealing with my brutal reality. How do I deal with that? No different than Jim Collins talks about in Good to Great. What is my brutal reality? How am I going to get through this? And how do I make this brutal reality my defining moment? So that's why I always remember September 9th, 2006, the day I fired everybody. It's the defining moment of my life. It was also the worst day of my career.
Yeah. Well, entrepreneurs another way to think about it is big risk takers typically. They like to overcome those challenges, as we were talking about, but eventually everybody hits roadblocks and everybody suffers failures. I don't care if they're small or big, no one's immune to that. But what is your 4-step process or formula, if you will, Todd, for helping successful leaders to turn those failures into catalysts for success?
Yeah, a great question. Thanks so much for asking it. It really is. It's a fail forward formula, essentially. So if something doesn't go your way, well, use me. I'm $600,000 in debt. That was not working for me really well. That was a bit of a problem. We'll just kind of leave it at that. It kind of speaks for itself. So I had to recognize my mindset. So my mindset was, I'm $600,000 in debt because I extended way too many payment terms, and I was chasing the white whale, my Moby Dick of 20 million in revenue. That's on me. So the first step is to recognize my mindset and recognize what part of that isn't working anymore. Second part of it is, what do I want? So I want to be out of debt. I want to honor my commitments to my vendors and my banks, etc. So then I have to create an intention, not an expectation. So my intention is, I'm going to somehow find a way to get out of this debt. Don't know how yet, because an expectation is a win or lose. An intention has a lot of open-ended. It's like the river is going to wind and take me where I need to go. So my goal is to get out of debt. I'm going to create an intention that I'm going to get out of debt somehow. That's my brutal reality. The third step in the process is to create massive strategies and take massive actions around that intention. That's why we tried so many different sales models. That's why we did so many different tests in A and B to find out where that inflection point was, where I could get out of debt by the increased demand and managed supply. I can charge more for my services, for my talent. So we're trying all those things. And then the fourth step is to iterate and get massive feedback. We would literally have a fail forward contest every week. Whoever had the most failures on our sales floor was actually the winner. Not who had the most sales, because that person learned the most. And then we would have a daily huddle, and then just communicate weekly or monthly. No, we communicate daily, often twice a day, the beginning and the end of the day. What were we learning? What are we hearing? What is the marketplace telling us? Who needs what in Houston? Who needs what in Detroit? Where can we find this guy? Where can we find this gal? How do we get them? And iterate until it becomes a process. It's like a flywheel effect almost. Once it starts spinning, the best thing the entrepreneur can do is get the hell out of the way. Because as my staff would tell you if they were on the call, they would say, yeah, Todd, everything will be running great. And who wants to come in and screw it all up because he has a new bright and shiny idea that he heard on a podcast? Todd. And he's going to come in and screw it up. So literally they had to tell me, get back in your lane, stay in your area of being the visionary, and let us do what we have to do. But the proper KPIs in place. Are we hitting our profitability? Yes. Are we growing by the percentage numbers? Yes. Are we doing this? Yes. Then get out of our way, which really was a real challenge.
Yeah, that is tough. Like you said, because for years you were like, no, I feel anxiety about letting you do stuff that I think I probably am more qualified to do for whatever reason, whether it was true or not. But what I really liked that resonated with me and what you said was setting that intention, which is the root of the word intentional. Right. And that is, but what you said was, it's not the same as having to come up with a formula or a plan, and have it all mapped out. No, because most of the time as an entrepreneur, you don't really know where things are going to turn out, right?
Correct.
You're making stuff up as you go along. People around you may or may not realize that, but the fact is, entrepreneurs every day are figuring it out just like the rest of us.
There's a little bit of winging it going on, no doubt.
Pretty much, right?
Yeah,
and so when people come to you, what do we do, boss? You're like, we'll do this and we'll see how that turns out. But, you do have to be intentional about it. You just can't wing it. And you can't, but by the same token, you don't want to have analysis paralysis and sit around for weeks and months agonizing. Oh God, how are we going to plan out to get out of the $600,000 debt or whatever? You had to just start taking steps one at a time.
That's a really interesting point. And so we're getting new opportunities coming at us as the country's coming out of the recession, and companies would call us, hey, I hear you can find this unicorn of a skilled tradesperson. Sure, but we only want to pay 20% below of what you're charging. We would walk. It's a discipline to walk. Would it have helped the revenue line? Of course. Would it have fed my old ego, my old pride at 20 million? Of course. But it wouldn't have stuck to my intentional goal, which is to get out of debt, because I know I needed enough spin and churn of cash to get to that number. So that's really where the intentional part does have a lot of discipline to it, because you often have to say no to the bright and shiny stuff, sometimes for the very boring, methodical, rudimentary, do it over and over and over again, keep making the donuts mindset. But that's really, again, that discipline to saying no was a big piece to, again, getting out of that debt.
Yeah, absolutely huge. Well, one final thing I want to ask you about, Todd, is you say you always rely on storytelling when you first advise a new client. Give us an example and tell us why storytelling is so important.
Well, I think for me anyways, I believe storytelling is the way to sell, the way to present an idea. And, just like being on a podcast today, I'm telling you stories about my client whose intention was to get 3.5 days of work versus 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And how did he do that? And I tell his story. And in there, people, I think, self-identify with something that lands with them. Oh, wow, someone may listen to the show. Yeah, I'd love to grow my revenue by 70%. I'd love to grow my revenue by 500%. Oh, 3.5 days a week sounds pretty good to me and my family. That'd be awesome. Versus, hire me. I'm the greatest coach in the world. I can help you grow your revenue. I can help you work less and enjoy life more. That's all nonsense. These are people that I've actually done it with. I've actually done it for myself. And so in the power of storytelling, people identify, people feel a connection with the presenter. And what I think for me anyways, the storytelling does the most for me is it makes me do 3 things that I think are really important. I have to be authentic, I have to be transparent, and I have to demonstrate vulnerability in sharing, especially my stories, because some of them don't make me look so good. Well, if you're going to be working with a coach, you've got to have a high level of trust. And if the coach comes in on a very, very even level, creates that safe room so you can share because they've shared the worst day of their lives, then you're going to feel a whole lot more comfortable being open. Quick story about that. I had a client, she saw me speak. I told the story of being $600,000 in debt. I get off stage. She comes over and introduces herself. She's like, I just want to let you know, I'm going to hire you.
Oh,
who doesn't want to hear that when they come off stage, right?
Yeah,
I said, tell me, what was the magical sales pitch I gave you? She goes, it was the story you told around being $600,000 in debt. I'm only $100,000 in debt. You're 5 times worse than me. I'll be an easy fix for you. And she just laughed.
Nice.
But it was the story versus I can help you be more profitable. Well, that just sounds like something you could read in a brochure. When a human being saying, I made a lot of mistakes. I screwed up a lot of things. I had to make a bunch of changes. It all starts inside out. And maybe I'm for you and maybe I'm not, and that's okay. But for someone to say, yeah, your story, when someone says, yeah, you're $500,000 more in debt than I am, I'm going to be an easy fix for you. I couldn't help but laugh.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing that about storytelling. I absolutely agree. People are going to remember things off this podcast. Like you said, the $600,000, the lemons, the phrase from suck to success. So I can't wait to read your book.
Oh, thank you.
Todd, by the way, where can people go to learn more about you and your company?
So Brandon, the best place people can reach me is on my website, extraordinaryadvisors.com. Send me an email if you want to connect. I'm Todd at extraordinaryadvisors.com. Mention to me that you heard me on Brandon's show, and I'm happy to give you 30 minutes to talk about. During COVID, I've done about 67 free consultations with entrepreneurs who are wrapped up in chaos and crisis. And again, they say, well, I'm only $50,000 in debt. Maybe you can help me, or I think I'm going to lose my business. You almost lost yours. Maybe you can help me. And a lot of the talking I'm doing is getting them unstuck around their mindset, getting them unstuck around possibilities and opportunities, and recognizing even in tough times, within tragedy, there is opportunity, and maybe for their businesses, I can help kind of shine a little bit of a light on something that they're ignoring.
That is so generous. Thank you so much. So go to extraordinaryadvisors.com or email Todd and he'll hook you up with 30 minutes of free consulting just for being a listener to the podcast. Again,
Absolutely.
Todd, what a pleasure. Such a great conversation. We could talk for hours, but I want to let you go and get back to helping your clients make the most of their businesses.
Brandon, thanks so much for having me on the show today.
Thank you. All right, bud. I'll let you hit it.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Hang on. Let me just hit